Our next session, this Convergence session, is brought to you by the Kirkpatrick Family Fund and is titled Beyond Imagination, Technology Aiding Creative Thought. With the help of our leading experts, we will take a mind-boggling leap into the future of technology and how that will help shape our creative thought in the years ahead. Leading our discussion today is one of the world's most prolific creators of interactive content. He has created breakthrough entertainment experiences on every digital platform, including satellite television, game consoles, broadband internet, interactive television, and mobile networks. In 2009, he was named one of the 25 executives to watch by Digital Media Wire. His 22-year career marked by achievements which include several milestones. He was the first to do multi-channel television service in Asia, the first multiplayer Java games on the web, the first interactive game show on television, the world's first streaming video services on mobile phones, the largest audience for live interactive video events ever on the web, and the most popular free book download in history. He has served in executive leadership roles at major media companies, most recently as the president of digital media at OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network. He's also been the creative director at MTV Music Television. Here to guide us in our rousing conversation about how technology aids creative thinking, welcome Robert Tercek.
Thank you.
Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very
Have a
kindly.
great time.
Thanks, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, it's great to be back in Oklahoma. I am so thrilled to be here. I want to thank our hosts. I want to thank the city of Oklahoma, the state, the fine universities, the Chickasaw Nation, and all the great sponsors for making this happen, because I've been having a terrific time the last couple of days. I hope you have been as well. How about that entertainment last night? Fantastic. Tony, can you bring up my first slide, please? So it's a commonplace these days. It's a commonplace idea to talk about creativity as a kind of pathfinding mission that you're making your way through, you're discovering new trails, new paths. And many people say that our educators are teaching our students today, they're preparing them for jobs that haven't been invented yet. Now, as you just heard, in my career, I've actually never had a job that existed before I had it. Every job I've had was for a brand new company, a brand new organization, a brand new initiative, and sometimes in a brand new industry. And I've got to tell you, it's not always that easy dealing with new technology. Sometimes it feels like you're pushing this giant rock up a hill. When you do a live demonstration on stage, there's a lot of risk involved. When you're launching a new service, there's all kinds of challenges that you'll face. And so you're having to kind of work at the coal face of innovation. It's a process of trial and error. But some amazing things can happen. And honestly, the way I generally feel about my job is this sense of childlike wonder that you heard Ken Robinson talk about yesterday. I was so thrilled to hear him say that. This sense of limitless possibilities, that almost anything can happen if you just put your mind to it, if you just focus on it, and if you've got the right technologies. And today we're going to hear from some speakers who are going to show you some amazing new ideas that are coming, that are shaping the world that we live in. I wanted to start this session with three ideas that I've learned from my experience. The first one is the concept of scale. Now, if you're in the innovation business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you deal with venture capitalists, you're going to hear this phrase a lot, scale. They're always looking for ideas that scale. And they want a big, huge idea. They want scalable infrastructure that's stable, that can support thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of simultaneous users. So this concept of scale is something that you'll hear a lot about in innovation. I learned about scale in an interesting way. I started out small. When I was young, when I finished my college experience, I was painting. I was actually studying in Europe, and my professor was Professor Dr. Nagel. Nagel means nail in German, and trust me, he was tough as nails. And so he felt that I needed some discipline, and so he made me work very small scale, and we continued to go smaller and smaller and smaller until I was working on paintings the size of a postage stamp. And this was a constraint that really, it was very frustrating for me to work that small, but he wanted me to focus on scale, a small scale, something that was manageable for me. Well, when I got back from Europe, I was in New York, and I decided I wanted to go a little bit bigger, so I started painting. I kind of broke out of that small scale. I started painting bigger paintings, and paintings that were big enough to fill a loft. And some TV directors that I knew saw them, and they said, gosh, you really ought to be working in television. Why don't you start doing set design? You could be a creative director on a set. I said, that sounds fantastic. Let's do it. And so, of course, soon enough, I was working on a larger scale. I was working on shows, big concert tours, and music videos in New York. And this was actually really fun for me. Because imagine, I went from a studio where I had my painting kit, and if I showed a painting, maybe a few hundred people would see it, 1,000 people if I was lucky at a gallery. But now I was putting things on stage at these giant rock concerts, and thousands of people would see them. And sometimes I'd be doing music videos where millions of people would see them. And eventually, I got to work on some really big tours, like the Rolling Stones Steel Wheels tour, where I was working on a canvas that was unimaginably big to me. The scale was gigantic, extra large. It was 8 stories tall. And I was designing all the special effects and all the video. So I was working at an extra large scale. And I learned something from this experience early in my career. I was 24 years old at this time. And what I learned is that really great creative leaders think big. If you're a creative leader, if you've got an idea that's really big and you want to get people to come work with you, you're going to have to convince them to stop working on their idea. You're going to have to convince them to drop what they're doing and to kind of gather around you. And the directors that I worked with that were really good at what they did, they had a great big vision. Crazy big ideas, and perhaps the craziest of them all was a guy named Wayne Isham. He was the ultimate live event rock and roll director. And he would produce these spectacular events in giant arenas. And so I had the opportunity to work with him as a creative director for the Moscow Music Peace Festival in 1989. I was 25 years old. And this blew my mind. It was the largest rock concert ever in Europe. It was the largest rock concert ever in the Soviet Union. And this was back in the old days when it was the Soviet Union. They had the largest land convoy in history since the Second World War, across Europe with all the gear they needed. And we rocked out in the Lenin Stadium with 300,000 fans. It was an amazing idea, great big vision that Wayne Isham had. And the day before the concert, we had everything ready to go. And of course, when you're working in the Soviet Union, there was a lot of government process we had to observe. We had to go through the formalities. Well, the day before the show, everything was set to go, and the director came in and he said, I've got an idea. What I would love to do, before the concert starts, I want to see a helicopter fly in, and it's going to fly over the whole stadium, and then it's going to land right in the middle of the stadium. And I listened to this, and I said, this guy's crazy. How can he do it? How can he do it? There's going to be 300,000 people in this stadium, and besides, we're in the Soviet Union. How is he going to get permission to fly a helicopter into this stadium? So I didn't believe it. I actually didn't see how that was going to be possible. You can imagine my surprise the next morning when the concert started and we saw this gigantic helicopter fly in. Somehow they managed to convince in 24 hours the Soviet army to lend them a helicopter, and the thing flew in, and the Soviet army marched out and cleared a circle in the middle of the stadium that was filled with a teeming crowd of fans. They pushed them back, the helicopter landed, and out jumped Ozzy Osbourne, who's kind of godlike in Russia. So I learned a great lesson there, which is if you want to inspire people to do the impossible, think very, very, very big, sometimes crazy big. That's the first lesson. The second thing I wanted to share with you today is this concept of dialogue. Now, we've been having a great dialogue here. This is fantastic, right? To do this live in person, an opportunity to meet people, exchange ideas, connect with strangers from different countries, share your visions with them. Well, that's one great way to do dialogue. But of course, enabling technologies are out there now that allow us to connect with people all over the world. And I had a firsthand experience with this as well, back in 1992. At that time, I was working in MTV in Asia. MTV had asked me to go over to Asia to launch MTV. I was based in Hong Kong. I was traveling all over Asia. We were broadcasting all over. The satellite footprint went all the way from Egypt to the Philippines, all the way north to Siberia, covering all of China and all of India, all the way down to the top of Australia. It covered about a quarter of the Earth's surface. And we didn't actually know who was watching. When we put the signal up, it was free to air. Anybody with a satellite dish could pull the signal down. It's a little hard to program for a quarter of the Earth's surface if you don't know who's watching. And so I made a little commercial that we put on the air at night that said, if you're watching this, send us a fax. We didn't have email. This is 1992. There was no World Wide Web at that point for us to use. And so we used the fax machine. We used the simple technology that we knew was available. And so we put that commercial up. The next morning we came into work, and in those days, the fax machines had a roll of thermal paper. And the paper was rolled out all over the floor. We had gotten thousands of faxes that night. So the next night we ran it again, same thing. We used up the entire roll of paper. So we got a couple more fax machines. And every night we were getting these letters. And so our hosts on television would start to read the letters. We just started reading the letters. Well, soon enough, kids started sending us. They started sending us letters. They started sending us photographs. They started sending us pictures that showed, oh, sorry, wrong button there. They started showing us pictures of themselves. And this was very, very powerful. We would take the pictures from people from, let's say, students in one town in India. They would send us their photos of their school and their friends and some of the celebrations that they have there. We'd talk about it on air. Well, the next week, we would get thousands of letters from Pakistan and from other countries neighboring India. They'd say, well, if you're going to show a picture of India, you've got to show a picture of us. And so we started this incredible feedback loop. This is before the World Wide Web. It was before we had these abilities to communicate back. And we created this incredible bond with our audience. Within a year and a half of launching MTV in Asia, it was the most successful launch MTV's ever had. And Star TV was acquired by News Corp. The satellite system we were broadcasting on was acquired by News Corp. And when The Economist wrote about that, they mentioned that the power of the MTV brand was one of the reasons that News Corp was attracted to that purchase. Because we'd established a dialogue with our audience, a connection with them. And we made a little bit of room in our programming, just enough room for them to have a part, to play a part in it. And we tried all sorts of different things, voting for your favorite shows, send in your requests, and so forth. So although we didn't have the instant feedback that you get today, we did get an opportunity to hear back from our audience. Now, as it turns out, this is a skill set that television broadcasters and other major media companies are still working hard. They're still struggling to learn how to do this. This presents a challenge to their business process, but it is inevitable. Because the 21st century, the second century of electronic media, is about two-way telecommunication. It's about true participation for audiences. And media companies of all sorts need to develop a new skill, the ability to listen closely to their audience, the ability to really hear what they're saying and make room for them in the programming. And I would say to you that most of our creative industries, our so-called creative industries, advertising, media, and television and broadcasting and so forth, they haven't really yet developed a facility with this. And so if you're young and ambitious in the audience and you have a creative idea that involves harnessing your audience's creativity and somehow including that in your programming, I think there's rich opportunities ahead for you. The last idea I want to share with you is this concept of open. Now, as creative people, of course you're open, right? You're open-minded, you're open to new ideas, you're open to new experiences. That's common. The kind of openness I want to talk about is a little bit different. It's technology-based. Technology-based openness. Now, 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to launch some of the first video services on mobile phones around the world. And I had all kinds of ideas. I was so excited about this. Every day I would come into work, and I'd have pictures and videos and diagrams of all the cool things that we could do. And I just was brimming with ideas. And then I would sit down with the engineers and start to tell them about my ideas, and then they would show me a picture like this. And this picture... This picture was basically their way of saying, look, Rob, you can't quite do all the stuff that you want to do, and here's why. And so I had to learn a little bit more about how the wireless network worked, because there were certain constraints. Wireless networks at that time were not open. And so some of the ideas that I had were more like internet ideas, open access to everybody, the ability for people to send things back and forth. Couldn't quite do that so easily in wireless at that time. So I learned about the wireless network, and I learned about networks in general, and these technologies that underlie the experiences that consumers have. And I realized then that every innovation, every creative thing that we experience that comes over a network is really riding on top of the innovations of thousands of other people. Because behind this diagram, there are literally thousands and thousands of ideas, thousands of innovations that make it possible for us to have these miniature miracles in our pocket, these mobile phones that are such powerful microcomputers, with broadband internet connections and video, of course. And so it's kind of a miracle if you think about it. All the work, a collaborative process that took years, where scientists and researchers would patent new technologies that then made possible other innovations. And that made possible another wave of innovations until you get to the day and age where we are today, where truly you've got a supercomputer in your pocket. It's quite a powerful thing. What drives this is openness. Openness, open APIs, open standards, open platforms, open technology, open source technology. You don't need permission anymore to innovate. Anyone has the ability to innovate. Anyone has the ability to publish. Anyone has the ability to create and share ideas. This is a new idea. This is the first time in history where anyone has the power to create ideas and share them worldwide. And so we're entering this brilliant new age, I think, a new age of creativity, where people are going to be connected through technology to share ideas with each other. These ideas aren't just about content. They're not just about media. They're actually the ideas that shape us as a culture, and they shape our civilization. Because every artifact of civilization, whether it's government and law, religion and faith, our books and literature and our arts, our music, our science, these are all products of human imagination. And today we are creating more information than ever before. In fact, we're creating twice as much information than ever existed every 2 days, according to the CEO of Google. That's an extraordinary thing. And these open standards are what make it possible for people to innovate freely.